You know, back in the day, if your song wasn't under 4 minutes, it just wouldn't get played. In fact, if it was over 3.5 minutes, it was a big gamble. Coming up next, we're telling the stories of 5 songs that defied the odds and at over 7 minutes long made it to the top 40 and were huge hits. In fact, a few of them became the biggest hits of the year they were released. One may have invented prog rock, and it was inspired by bedsheets, and it failed when it first released. It didn't even hit the top 100. But then it went straight to the top of the charts 5 years later when a DJ played it so he could go take a long smoke break. Another came from the singer drunkenly slurring the words. They were written down incorrectly and people had no clue what he was saying, so naturally it became a smash. And one from the most famous rock band ever, where their singer dropped the F-bomb when he screwed up a line and it got left in, and it still went to number 1. 60 years ago. Stay tuned. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you told scary stories till you creeped out your friends or were on the receiving end of that at sleepovers when you were a young kid growing up, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. I know you'll enjoy this channel. Click the white button and click the bell. Also, check us out at professorofrock.com. Go sign up there. We're building the biggest community, the greatest community about music out there. If you're a fan, check it out. Today's going to be fun, I'm telling you. You know, when it comes to the Billboard Hot 100, songs that stretch past 7 minutes are a rare breed indeed. In fact, only a handful have ever made it into the top 40. Most of the music that climbs the charts, tend to be much shorter because of radio airplay limits, and especially today, the way streaming works. But on this episode of Professor of Rock, we're celebrating the exceptions to the rule. The greatest epic top 40 hits of all time. And when I mean epic, I'm talking long in length. All right, let's kick off the countdown. And what better way to do it than with this song? A song that wasn't a hit until it was released on a monumental double album of live recordings. It was actually the biggest selling record of all time for a few years. At number 5 on our countdown of the top 5 hit songs over 7 minutes, it's Do You Feel Like We Do by Peter Frampton from the mega album Frampton Comes Alive. Do You Feel Like We Do, written and performed by guitar, singer, and songwriter Peter Frampton, was originally released on his 1973 studio album Frampton's Camel. However, it wasn't until the song became a staple of his live performances that it truly gained widespread attention. Went on to become one of the 3 hit singles from his iconic 76 live album Frampton Comes Alive. The live version of the song was recorded on June 14, 1975 at the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco, California. Now, Peter and I talked about Do You Feel Like We Do? Here's what he said.
It's because I never play the same thing twice. The song is the same. The parts of the song are the same. The arrangement is the same, but the solo is completely different just about every night, every night. And if you ask me to play, what I played last night, I'd say, I'd have to hear the tape and give me 3 weeks to learn what I played, because it's stream of consciousness. I don't ever play the same thing.
Do You Feel Like We Do came out in September of 76. On September 8th, U.S. President Gerald Ford even invited Peter Frampton to stay at the White House, a gesture in recognition of the album's phenomenal success. It became the closing number of his set and one of the highlights of his show. His concert version was considerably longer, with the version recorded on Frampton Comes Alive alone exceeding 14 minutes. While the song was edited for the 45 RPM single and promo versions sent to AM radio stations, still ran over 7 minutes long. It reached number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 7 in Canada, and number 39 in the UK. I'm making it one of the longest songs to break the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 in history. All right, coming in at number 4 on the countdown of the top 5 hit songs over 7 minutes long. Truly one of the most beautiful and poignant songs of the rock era. I know you're going to agree with me here. I got the Moody Blues with Nights in White Satin.
Nights in white satin.
You know, the Moody Blues were on the verge of collapse. They were directionless, their identity in shambles, and completely broke. Their lead singer and frontman, he'd walked away from the band. He left them scrambling for a lifeline. In a desperate move, the remaining members took a gamble on a 19-year-old kid, a vocalist named Justin Hayward. They were hoping that he could breathe new life into this fading band, their fading future. After a late-night gig, the young frontman returned to his tiny one-room flat, and he sat on the edge of his bed, picked up his acoustic guitar, and a melody had been lingering in his mind for quite some time. And in that quiet moment, he wrote 2 verses and a chorus.
Never reaching the end.
Heartache fueled this creativity. He'd been deeply in love only to be left shattered. Though he'd moved through other relationships since, and the sting of that breakup, it just hadn't faded. Crazy enough, inspiration struck from an unlikely source. It was a lavish gift from a woman that he briefly dated after the breakup. It was started as a personal expression of longing and loss, unexpectedly became the foundation of a song for the ages. And more than that, it was the spark that ignited a new movement in rock history.
Gazing at people.
Random thoughts drifted through his mind at this moment. Memories of the heartbreak, the lingering sting of rejection, and the emotional weight of a breakup that was still haunting him, even though it had been months and months and months. As Justin searched for the right metaphor to capture the feelings, dawn began to break.
'Cause I love you.
Birds outside his window welcomed the new day, and that's when he recalled a gift from another woman. Now, not the one who had left him shattered, but someone from a brief, fleeting romance. And she'd given him the set of white satin sheets. Now, it was a romantic and thoughtful gesture, mind you, but it wasn't exactly practical, especially for a young man with a full beard. And by his own admission, he said he had less than perfect hygiene. Yet those white satin sheets became the symbol of something a lot deeper, a love, a lost love, a love found, and the way passion can burn bright before fading into heartbreak. A few hours of ecstasy unraveling into months of agony. Justin titled this work in progress Nights in White Satin, a phrase that carried that double meaning, subtly nodding to medieval nights as well, but the sheets as well. One by one, the 5 members of the Moody Blues, along with producer Tony Clark and conductor Peter Knight, began to envision how Justin's song could evolve into something grand, something epic when he showed it to him. They put together this arrangement, and then as they listened to the playback after that, they just exchanged glances. Their eyes lit up with the same unspoken understanding. They knew they had something special. Nights in White Satin wasn't just special, though. It was extraordinary. Nights in White Satin, combined with keyboardist Mike Pinder's recitation of the late lament, it gives the entire unedited version of the track a time of 7 minutes and 24 seconds.
I can't say anymore.
But get this, when it was first released, Nights in White Satin, in 1967, it bombed. It tanked. It didn't even make it into the Hot 100. It stalled at number 103. But then 4.5 years later, in 1972, it blew up when a DJ wanted to take a long smoke break. So he played the everlong version of Nights in White Satin. All of a sudden, listeners started requesting it like crazy. It went nuts. Other DJs followed suit and played it, and the belated discovery of Nights in White Satin led to a renaissance for the Moody Blues all over the globe. Nights in White Satin became more than just an esoteric pop hit. It was a precursor to the proliferation of the genre of progressive rock. It opened the door for bands like Yes and Genesis, Pink Floyd, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Jethro Tull. Prog rock came from a boring gift of bedsheets. The rejuvenated single went to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. It went top 10 in UK, Austria, Germany, and other European countries. And it hit number 1 in Canada. Man, what a story. Coming up next on our countdown of the top 5 hit songs over 7 minutes. This one clocks in at 17 minutes and 5 seconds. It's another progressive rock classic that broke the time barrier from a chorus that came from the singer being so drunk during the creation of it that he slurred the words that would become the title of the song. At number 3, I chose Iron Butterfly with In-a-gadd-da-vida. In-a-gadd-da-vida was supposed to be in the Garden of Eden, of course, but the singer's drunken creation of the song made the words a garbled mess, which of course made it a classic. I mean, this song is pure primal rock and roll, a hypnotic 17-minute odyssey that sprawls across an entire album side. With its relentless drum solo, its eerie organ riff, and trance-like groove, it feels like you're transported to a mystical dimension. I think it carried some deep esoteric meaning, but the truth is, it was just all a big misunderstanding. Yes, In the Garden of Eden became the stuff of legend when frontman Doug Ingle mumbled those words to drummer Ron Bushy. Bushy misheard it, scribbled it down. What he thought he heard was In-a-gadd-da-vida. But rather than correct the mistake, the band did the exact opposite. They leaned into it. The record label, they didn't object either. After all, the phrase sounded exotic, and in 1968, anything with a hint of Eastern mysticism was in vogue. The Beatles had just returned from India, and the Rolling Stones were dabbling with sitars. So what started as a slurred lyric became one of rock's most iconic and mysterious titles. Really a happy accident that only added to the song's legendary status. And when Doug Ingle wrote the song, he never envisioned it stretching remotely close to 17 minutes. But when the band hit the studio, fate had other plans, and fate is always in control, especially in rock and roll. What was supposed to be just a sound check, a quick run through to help engineer Don Cassell set the levels while they waited for their producer, Jim Hilton, to show up, it turned into something stranger than fiction. Now, Cassell sensed something special was going on, so he let the tape just keep rolling as the band locked into this hypnotic groove. By the time they'd finished, they realized they'd captured something raw and electric. I'm sure there were mistakes, but the energy was undeniable. Rather than try for a more polished take, they decided what they had was pretty perfect. And just like that, In-a-gadd-da-vida, all 17 minutes of it came to life. Iron Butterfly's In-a-gadd-da-vida, it did have one edit, but no FM station with any integrity played an unabridged version. As a single from the band's self-titled album, the track charted the highest in the Netherlands. It went to number 7. Now, it only peaked at number 30 on the Billboard Hot 100, but it was the number 1 selling record of all time for a couple of years. I think it came from a 17-minute one-hit wonder. Gotta love it. If someone asks you what is the greatest rock song ever made, and you named the next song on our countdown at number 2 as your answer, you would get no argument from me. It's the very definition of a rock classic. At number 2 at the bridesmaid position on our countdown of the top 5 hit songs over 7 minutes, I got Hey Jude by the Beatles.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad.
Hey Jude was the Beatles' longest single. It clocked in at 7 minutes and 5 seconds, an eternity by 1968 standards. In fact, at the time, it was the longest song ever released as a single. Back then, radio stations favored short tracks so they could, squeeze in more songs for more commercials. But Hey Jude changed the game entirely.
You feel the pain. Hey Jude, refrain.
When it became a massive hit, stations realized that if listeners loved the song, they'd stick around no matter the length, especially if the song was won by the Fab Four. That breakthrough opened the door for other epic tracks to dominate the airwaves, including the one we've chosen for the number 1 spot on this countdown, which is coming up in a few minutes. The Beatles' world was dramatically shifting when Paul McCartney wrote this song. John Lennon had fallen deep into his relationship with Yoko Ono, leaving his first wife Cynthia and their young son Julian behind. At this exact time, Paul had recently ended his long-term engagement to Jane Asher, making him the only Beatle who reached out to Cynthia and Julian during that turbulent time. One day, as Paul drove to the Lennon home in Surrey, a drive he made countless times for songwriting sessions, he found himself lost in thought. He was reflecting on Julian, child caught in the middle of a crumbling family, and how difficult life could be for a boy watching his parents drift apart. That was what was in his mind as he's driving along. And somewhere along that quiet drive, the first line came to him. Don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better.
Sad song and make it better.
It was a simple but heartfelt message, a way to encourage Julian, to remind him that even pain could be turned into something really beautiful. Paul was used to having melodies come to him when he was traveling to John's place. This happened quite a bit. He and John had spent hours writing together in that house with instruments and recording gear tucked away in the attic. But this time, something was different. This time he was writing not just a song, but really a message of hope, one that would soon resonate far beyond young Julian Lennon.
To make it better.
Now this is interesting. When Paul first played Hey Jude for John and Yoko, John immediately assumed the song was about him. I guess he latched onto the line, "You were made to go out and get her," and he took this as Paul's way of encouraging him to leave his first wife behind and fully commit to Yoko. He would say, "I always heard it as a song to me." And Paul, of course, denied that, but that was John's thinking.
Made to go out and get her.
Now, George Harrison wanted to add a guitar riff after the vocal lines in Hey Jude, but Paul shut this idea down. Tensions between them were already simmering, and McCartney's growing habit of micromanaging George's guitar parts only made things worse. Paul had a clear vision for this song, exactly what he wanted, and unfortunately for George, that vision didn't include that input. Again, the making of Hey Jude came about when the Beatles, the most storied band of the rock era, were on the verge of breaking up. They just weren't in a great place. George Martin, for one, was worried that radio would never play this song because it was too long. But John showed his confidence when he said, "They will if it's us." No truer words have ever been spoken. One other note, in the song's final bridge section at 2 minutes and 58 seconds, a spoken profanity is uttered by John Lennon after he mistakenly sings the wrong lyric during his background vocals on the last verse.
Under your skin, then you begin.
So Lennon sang "let her into" instead of "let her under your skin," and in frustration, John yells out, "Oh," followed by the F-bomb, "Oh, fudge."
Oh, fudge.
Now, the recording engineer, Ken Scott, admitted that the profanity was brought to his attention, but he couldn't hear it. The subtle but very real F-bomb was left on the final mix, bleeding through on the background vocal track, and has never been removed since then. It's difficult to hear, but you can if you listen to it with a pair of high-quality headphones. Now, Hey Jude slowly builds from McCartney's cold vocal intro, eventually reaching peak intensity with Paul delivering the better, 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 peppered by a Little Richard-styled scream that unleashes the euphoria of the addicting sing-along earnestness. Hey Jude was the very first release on Apple Records, the label owned by the Beatles, and the song was recorded at Trident Studios in London over 2 days, July 31st and August 1st of 1968, featuring a sweeping 36-piece orchestra.
Hey Jude.
In an unusual twist, the orchestra members didn't just play their instruments, they also joined in on the hand claps and sang along during the epic fade-out. For their extra effort, they were paid double their usual rate, making it one of the more memorable session gigs of their careers for sure. Julian Lennon didn't learn that Hey Jude was written for him until he was a teenager. It was around this time that he began reconnecting with his father, John, and would visit him in New York on occasion, continuing the relationship until John's passing. Hey Jude is 7 minutes and 5 seconds long, was a massive global happening, blasting the #1 in over 20 countries, including Canada, the UK, and the US. It had a hold on #1 for 9 straight weeks. It ended the year as the biggest song in 1968 and the biggest of the Beatles' career. As I mentioned, Hey Jude paved the way for the song that we've chosen as #1 on our countdown of the top 5 hit songs over 7 minutes. This one's a powerful sing-along anthem about the loss of innocence and the disillusionment felt by an entire generation. At #1, I gotta go with probably top 5 songs of all time, American Pie by Don McLean.
I started singing bye bye I miss American Pie.
The repeated phrase, the day the music died in American Pie, refers to a tragic plane crash in 1959, of course, that claimed the lives of early rock and roll legends Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Richie Valens, effectively marking the end of the early rock era.
The day the music died.
This phrase became the widely accepted nickname for the crash whenever people talk about it. That's what they say. However, the song's message extends far beyond just mourning McLean's childhood musical idols. It speaks of the profound cultural shifts, the disillusionment, and the loss of innocence experienced by his generation, the early rock and roll generation.
Rock and roll, can music save your mortal soul?
The song reflects on the dramatic changes that occurred between the 1959 crash and the turbulent years of late 69 into 1970. I had a deep conversation with Don McLean about the meaning and crafting of his iconic masterpiece. Here's what he said.
The vision that I was finding, I didn't have a vision, but I did, but I just was exploring it, if you know what I mean. And that launched the song in a shorter version, and then the longer version was the longest song ever #1 for 50 years until Taylor dethroned it with her song.
Longest of the rock era. I think it's the greatest question ever asked in a recorded song. Do you believe in rock and roll, and do you believe it can save your mortal soul?
You a man living your mortal soul.
It's the question that I've been seeking my whole life, and the reason I do what I do.
Rock and roll, can music save your mortal soul?
You know, we have records and music to cling to. And we've seen, because we've seen 9/11, we've seen this latest thing where everybody's pulling statues over because somebody wasn't perfect. You know, you can't do that to songs. You know, they're immutable and they're forever. And so that's something that has become very, very clear to me, more so than ever.
For nearly 50 years, American Pie at 8 minutes and 43 seconds held the record as the longest song to make it to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Till that record was broken by Taylor Swift and her song All Too Well that times in at exactly 10 minutes.
All too well.
But we'll go with Don McLean. We're talking about the rock era. Don McLean's opus is a true pop standard and a masterful exemplar of brilliant song composition.
Drinking whiskey and rye and singing, this'll be the day that I die.
American Pie went to #1 everywhere. Australia, Canada, New Zealand, here in the Hot 100. Just missed the top spot in the UK, which is really crazy. Went to #2. It was the third biggest single of the Billboard's year-end survey for 72. Probably would have come in even higher for the year if it hadn't been released in October of 71. Some of the time on the chart in that year wasn't factored into the ranking for 72, so there's that.
Return, and while Lenin read a book on Marx.
But man, one of the greatest songs of all time. I tell you, you cannot listen to this song without hearing the whole thing and without just singing along to it. I've offered to break down every single part of American Pie. I actually did it for my son. My son asked me, "Dad, will you tell me what every lyric and every part of this song means?" And he had a couple of friends over and they're like, "Yeah, we want to know too." So I sat down and I played the whole song and went line by line and explained what every single thing means, the metaphors, the references. And I'm happy to do that if you'd like to see it. Didn't get too deep into that in the interview, but let me know.
Be the day that I die.
Well, that wraps up another countdown, our ranking of the top 5 hit songs that were stamped with a time code that went beyond the 7-minute mark. It's a remarkable achievement if you think about it, especially considering that the average song that breaks the top 40 in the Billboard Hot 100 is only about 3 minutes and 25 seconds long. For me, if I knew about the original unedited version of a song, I just never wanted to settle for the shortened version. In fact, it annoys me to this day when radio plays the edited versions of songs. I used to do that on the American Top 40 Countdown. It drove me nuts. I want to experience every bar, every syllable, every nuance of a song. The kind of detail an artist pours their heart and soul into when recording. I mean, would you ever buy a painting with only half the canvas filled or 2/3 of it? Now, it wouldn't be right to not acknowledge Layla by Derek and the Dominoes as a well-deserved honorable mention here. just missed my countdown, although there was a dreaded radio edit of the song, which should have been outlawed. The full version came in at 7 minutes and 4 seconds. The reason it didn't make the countdown is because they usually play the edited version. Layla, written by Eric Clapton and Jim Gordon, and really Rita Coolidge should get a credit. That's another story. It scaled the Billboard Hot 100 to number 10. It was a number 7 smash in the UK, number 2 in New Zealand, and immensely popular in Puerto Rico, where it went all the way to number 1. Also, a lot of you will probably ask why I didn't put Stairway to Heaven in this countdown. Well, it would have been number 1. It's because it was never released as a single. But it went on to become the most played song in classic rock history, that's for sure. If they would have released it as a single, it definitely would have easily went top 5, maybe even number 1, but that's why it's missing. The criteria was it had to make it into the top 40.
Flying the stairway to heaven.
Anyway, let us know your memories of these songs. Let us know what's the most epic song of all time that's over 7 minutes long. Whether it charted or not, I want to get your take, your opinion. I love Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, like I said. And there's plenty of Pink Floyd songs that fit into that, yes, and a lot of prog rock. But let's have a great discussion below, and maybe we can do another countdown of the greatest epic songs ever, not even counting charts. Let me know if you'd like to see that. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.